the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome back to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast, where I am spreading awareness about living with chronic disease. I've been living with MS for 27 years. Today, I have with me a beautiful lady from the state of Georgia that was diagnosed with her MS when she was 15 years old, and she's 27 now. She's the same age that I was when I got diagnosed, and she wanted to come on and talk about her journey with her MS. Please welcome to the podcast, Mollie. How you doing today, Mollie?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing okay. So, Mollie, you were 15 when you got diagnosed with your MS. I love talking to people that wanted to share their story, and you just have such a unique story. Being at the age that you were when you were diagnosed, can you kind of take us through your journey with your diagnosis at 15? What kind of symptoms were you having back then, and what made your mom and dad, threw the red flag up that something wasn't right, and they took you to go see a doctor?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when I look back on it, especially because I don't like talk about from the moment that I was diagnosed to now. I usually just talk about the here and now. But when I was 15, that was my freshman year of high school. I was in the process about to try out for cheerleading for my sophomore year. And right before then, we had spring break, and my family decided to go on a little trip. And so we were going to go to Atlanta to go visit some family that I had never met before. I do not do well in car. I'm very motion sick. I get very car sick. And so when we got there, I remember feeling off. And so I was just like, ugh, I felt extremely heavy and tired, and I just did not have energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little nauseous, but nothing like too severe like I was used to, but I just felt off. And so I was outside kind of meeting my cousin who I was meeting for the first time, and she had her friend with her, and we were standing outside, and all of a sudden I just got this weird sensation in my right forearm. And it's crazy to explain it because I know it sounds like I'm crazy, but I was numb, but I was also hurting. And I always tell people, like, I have this different type of numb where I'm numb to where I can't feel the outside, like if you're touching my arm or if you're touching one of my limbs, but my bones will literally feel like someone's taking a hammer and is beating my bones with it. And so that moment when I had that first symptom, it actually felt like someone was beating my arm with a hammer, but I also could not feel my arm. And so I was just completely perplexed by what I was feeling. And so right there in front of my cousin and her friend, I picked up my arm, or I had already started biting it to see if I could feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I took it and slammed it into the car door to see if I could feel it, and I didn't. I mean, of course I didn't. I was numb. So
Yeah.
they looked at me like I was crazy, and I realized, it kind of felt like it was just a one-time thing. However, in a matter of a 5-minute span, it would happen one more time. And then we would go about our weekend. We went to a Braves game, and then we, just had a good weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came home, and that Monday, I started cheerleading tryouts. Cheerleading tryouts was where my full on, what my doctors would call MS spell attack would happen. And my spells consisted of all of my symptoms coming out together at the exact same time, which causes stroke like symptoms. And so the first time I experienced that, it was at my tryouts, and I was a back base at the time, had a friend in the air, and I was holding her. All of a sudden, my right side just fell completely.
Mm,
And I lost all strength, but then at the same time, my face was drooping on my right side. I was slurring my words. My right hand and right arm, like the lower half of my arm and my right hand, has dystonia really bad, so really, really bad spasms.
mhm.
And so it would lock up completely and it would last for about a minute. And then I'd go back to normal. And then it would happen one more time in that 5 minute span. And so when it happened that first time, the flyer that I had in the air, she actually fell on top of me. And all I could think about at the moment, I was like, you know what? I got to get to the bathroom. I got to hide. Like, I have no clue what's going on with me. And so, as soon as she got up, I was back to normal. And so, they just thought that, I had just dropped her or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But I lost the ability to hold her. And so, I ran to the bathroom and I had another attack. And then that just kind of started the 2 week journey of me just trying to get it to where my parents could see it so that they would believe me.
Yeah.
Um, and it was very frustrating because I knew something was wrong.
Right.
Um, and
And I know
it,
I know you were telling your parents, but I mean they weren't witnessing it, so it was hard for them to understand exactly what you were going through.
yeah, my mama, which growing up, school food was awful, so I would never eat. And I would just go to our school store to get food, and then I would drink water continuously throughout the day. And so when I went to her that Monday to tell her like what had happened, she was like, "Well, maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're not eating enough. Like, just make sure you start eating enough and you're not pushing yourself too hard." And so I said, "You know what? Maybe you're right." And so
Mm,
I started doing that. But each day that I would go, it would happen every single day, and it would just get worse. And I remember the first time that someone like really and truly saw it. Um, I was part of our youth praise team at church. And so every Wednesday I would go to youth group, but before then, we would have practice. And so I left cheerleading practice and I went there to go and practice for the praise team. And we were singing, and all of a sudden, in the middle of one song, it hit me. And so I dropped the microphone and I went straight into a spell, which was like a stroke. And all of the people that were with me, they just thought that like I just dropped the microphone, and then they quickly realized what was going on. And so they immediately tended to me. They sat me down, they had me rest for a second. And then when I felt fine, I said, okay, we can get back up and we can continue with the song. Like, we got to get through practice. And we started the song back, and literally in the exact same spot of the song, I did it again.
mm,
And so after that, and it was very strange because after about my second spell, it would take the life out of me, and I would just have no energy, and all I could think about is just basically going to sleep. And I remember I remember thinking, okay, when my mom gets here, I'm going to tell her that I just want to leave and go home. And before I could even say anything, the drummer who was there with me when it happened, he was an EMT at the time, and he pulled me and my mom out into the hallway, and he said, Brandy, I think you need to know that Molly is having these symptoms, and we witnessed it firsthand today twice, and it looks like a stroke. This is not normal. This is definitely neurological. Um, I think she needs to be seen for this. And so my mom was like, "Oh wow, like
mhm.
okay."
Yeah.
And so she like looked at me and she said, "We need to try to make sure that you're around me. If it happens again, get it on video. Do your best to like make sure that I can see it if I'm not there.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And the very next day, was my last day of tryouts. And I was 15 at the time, so I wasn't driving. So mama would come and pick me up and she would take me to where I needed to go every day. And that day, she picked me up, and I did not have one of my attacks while I was at tryouts. But I felt extremely tired and weak, and I just felt off.
Mhm.
That's something you'll hear me say constantly is I just say that my body feels off.
Mhm.
And I got in the car and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I just feel off. And I feel the exact same way that I feel when I'm potentially going to have one of these attacks, but nothing's happened today." And I was like, "So I don't know if it's going to get worse or if it's just not going to happen." And she said, "Well, we're going to go to the store real quick, and then we're going to head to the rec fields for your brothers because they've got baseball games, and then we'll go home." I was like, "All right, fine." So we got in the car and we left and we headed to the local Walgreens. And she goes to get out the car, and I said, "Hey, um, do you want me to come with you?" And she said, "No, you and your brother, Owen, y'all stay in the car. I'll be just a second. I'll come back." And as soon as mama got out the car and she got into the Walgreens, my spell hit me. And my immediate thought was, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get to mama. She's got to see it." And so I started screaming at my brother. I was like, "Get out the car, get out the car." And he was crying because he couldn't understand me.
Right.
He was like, "Molly, I can't understand you. What are you saying?" And so
Yeah, he was
I
scared.
decided that oh, yeah, he was terrified. I mean, seeing me talking to him and yelling at him, telling him to do something, and he can't understand what I'm saying,
Mhm.
he was just like, "You're mumbling. I can't understand you." And so I got out the car. I left him there and I started running. I say running, but I was probably just walking to my mom.
Right.
And when I got to her, she was walking out the door and it was gone. And so I was like, "Okay, you cannot leave my side. Do not leave my side because it's going to happen again in this 5 minute span." She was like, "All right, it's fine. We're going to head to the rec fields. That's at least 5 minutes in itself. And then we can see what it looks like."
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay." And so we get there, and this is during the time frame of the year where it's hot. It's starting to get hot. It's miserable. And so I was just exhausted. And I was very defeated because by the time we got to the rape fields, it had not happened again. And I was like, "What in the world?" And so we went to the game, we were at the game, and halfway through, I just decided, I was like, I can't do it anymore. So I went up to mom and I was like, "Hey, can we go home?" And she was like, "I mean, yeah, what's wrong?" And I said, I just don't feel good." She was like, "Are you like sick?" And I said, "No, I feel off. I'm exhausted. I just want to go home." And so she was, "All right, yeah, we'll do that. But we got to go back into town. Your Nana and Papa are looking at a house. We want to go look at it to kind of tell them what we think about it, and then we'll head home." I was like, "All right, it's fine. I'm probably gonna sit in the car and y'all do what you need to." I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay." And so we started heading that way. And I guess in that 3-ish, 5 minute drive, I decided that I was going to get out the car. And I can feel when I'm going to potentially have an attack, and I could feel it. I could feel it lingering. It was like taunting me, honestly.
Mhm.
And we go to get out the car, and we're walking around. I'm walking around the passenger side to get to the steps. And it hit me. And I had just enough time to kind of whimper at mama and turn to her and say, "It's happening."
Mm.
And she immediately turned around and she saw me, and just the screaming I heard from her, the look on her face, the fear, and then my family running out of the house and like, "What's going on?" And then they see me and then they're all just crying and freaked out. And I'm just like, "What's going on?" And I'm also in pain. And so they immediately like got me up, they put me in the car, and we immediately drove to the hospital here in our hometown. And there wasn't really much they could do there except for a CT and your typical labs and stuff.
Mhm.
But they wanted to do that because my family was always worried about the possibility of like a brain tumor because my dad's sister died when she was in her early 20s of a brain tumor.
Mhm.
And so when they saw those symptoms, they were like, oh my gosh, like this can't be happening. And so we got to the hospital, they ran the tests. The doctors never talked to me about my results. At some point, they talked to my parents, and my parents didn't tell me about it. They actually told me that the doctors didn't find anything. I had braces at the time, so they said there was too much artifact. But that they did want to do an MRI for 2 weeks later, um, up in Macon, just to get a clearer image, just to make sure nothing was wrong.
Okay.
Well, I was like, okay, that's fine. And they said, just don't go back to school tomorrow. Stay out, and then rest during the weekend. And if you feel better, you can go back Monday. I was like, all right, fine. And it was, I went downhill quick. Um, I left there thinking things were fine. I was not worried. But the next day, which was Friday, I quickly started to deteriorate. And I went from having, just two of those spells in that 5 minute span to I was having close to 20 of them. And it got brutal. It got to the point to where I couldn't function. And so my parents were really concerned. And then at the time, I was upstairs. I was living upstairs by myself. And so my parents were like, we don't trust you being up there. So we want you sleeping in our room on the floor at the end of the bed. That way, if anything were to happen, we can get to you quicker.
Mhm.
I was like, right. And so I did do that. And that same weekend, that Saturday morning, I ended up having one of my spells in my sleep. And I do think that this was God's doing at that moment because my mom is a heavy sleeper to the point nothing can wake her up.
Mm.
And for some reason, at 5 o'clock in the morning, she was woken up to me, I guess, making sounds. And she could just, she heard it. She immediately knew. My dad woke up. It was his first time seeing anything. And so they immediately got me into the car and we drove to another hospital, which is in Albany. And my mom told them what was going on. I guess talked to them about the results I got from the ER
Mhm.
the previous Thursday. And so they immediately were like, we're going to get an MRI now. And so I just remember being in the MRI machine. I was terrified. I'd never been in one before.
Mhm.
I was listening to music, and I chose my favorite genre of music, but I didn't even listen to it because the whole time that I was laying there, I was just thinking, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What am I about to find out that's just going to upend my life? And so I was full of anxiety, and I get back into the room. I'm trying to rest, and my papa had actually come to visit me to kind of check on me. And he told my parents, he was like, y'all go get some food. I'm going to sit here with Mollie. And my papa was my everything. He was everything to me. And he obviously did not know that I didn't know about the results from the ER visit I had 2 days before this,
Mhm.
because he said this must be related to what they found out on your MRI or on your CT on Thursday. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, do you not know? And I said, no. And he said, well, your mom told us that they saw shadows on your CT, but they couldn't make it out because of your braces. And so they wanted an MRI just to get a more in depth look. And I was like, oh, so I really did have something wrong. And about that time, my parents come back in and a nurse comes in. And I'm going to say this, when it comes to doctors and specialists, they have absolutely no couth when it comes to breaking awful news
Mm-mm. No.
to patients. And this nurse just looks at me as I'm sitting in the bed. I'm 15 years old. He looks at me and he says, well, the good news is that you're not having strokes at 15 years old. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then he says, what? It does look like you have multiple sclerosis. And we were like, what?
Mm,
But he didn't even say multiple sclerosis. He said MS.
yeah,
And so I was like, what?
yeah,
And immediately started sobbing. I mean, I'm sobbing. I'm asking what this is. My Mima, who's my dad's mom, she's a firecracker, and she kind of stood up for all of us that day, and she immediately cornered the guy and was like, "What are you talking about? You can't just drop this bomb. You see her over there bawling in the bed. You got to explain this."
yeah,
And this poor guy is just like, "I'm just the nurse. The doctor will be in here in a little bit and she will explain it further." And so I spent probably another 15 minutes just crying in the bed.
yeah,
And, and then the doctor comes in, she introduces herself, and she says, "So we're pretty positive that you have multiple sclerosis." And I was like, "What is that?" So she starts to explain it to me, and she's like, "But we want to do all the tests, which is the criteria for the diagnosis. So we want to do a spinal tap, in a couple weeks, and it'll be something you can go have done, and you'll go home in the same day. And then with whatever results you have, that will tell us if you do have MS or not."
mhm,
And I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "So just go home, rest, take it easy, whatever."
yeah,
And so that's what we did. We went home. I thought, you think when you get get good news that you're going to get better because you got that relief,
yeah,
but that was not the case for me. I continued to have them all day, every day for a week straight. And my mom just got fed up. And so she called my pediatrician and she was like, "Mareski, like, Mollie is not functioning. She is in pain. She can't sleep. She can't eat. I can't see her like this anymore." And so he said, "I'm not waiting anymore either." And so he said, "Pack your bags. I'm calling Eggleston and I'm getting her a bed right now." And so we packed our bags and we thought we might be there for 2 days, maybe just that weekend.
mhm,
Um, yeah, no, we were there for 2 weeks. I get there, and I truthfully and honestly don't think that that hospital trusted the results I got from the hospital where I was told that I had MS.
mhm,
And so when I got there and I said I was there for a spinal tap, they said, "Well, we don't think you're going to have that. We got to do our own test just to see if that's even warranted at this point."
yeah,
And so I kind of got happy and I was like, "Okay, I'm not going to have a huge needle go in my back.
right,
That is great."
yeah, right,
And so I decided to just kind of wander around the hospital. I went downstairs. They had this thing for all the children where the Falcons football players were there. They were signing jerseys and playing games and whatnot downstairs. And all of a sudden, my mom called me and she was like, "Hey, you need to come back upstairs." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "The doctors are here and they need to speak with you." And so I get up there and they say, "Okay, so we are scheduling a spinal tap and we're going to be doing it today." And I was like, "What? No,
mm,
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that." And they're like, "We need your results. We need it." And so they prepared me for the spinal tap. They did the spinal tap. Um, I handled the spinal tap fine, but after the spinal tap, they decided to also put EEG leads on my head. And when they did that, they moved me.
mm,
And
not
when they
good,
moved me, that no, it was not. It caused that it's like a post traumatic migraine
mhm,
from like missing your CSF.
yeah,
And it's awful. It lasted for 5 days. I could not do anything except lay in the bed and cry. Like
mm,
it was awful. And I just remember all the tests. I remember them doing eye exams and more blood work and more MRIs. And my spells at this point were getting so bad that I was just having them back to back to back to back.
mhm,
And so when I was in an actual MRI machine, they were trying to do my spinal MRI. And I had one of my attacks in there, and the nurse got like really irritated with me. And she was like, I need you to quit moving.
Mm.
And when I didn't respond and they pulled me out, they were like, oh, she's having an attack. And so after that, they were like, we're gonna have to put her to sleep. So they had to put me to sleep to do tests and stuff like that because my body just was it was actively attacking me and I could not stop it. Like it was crazy. I went from being what I felt was a completely healthy
15.
15-year-old to my life just flipping upside down.
Man.
And we were given the diagnosis officially, and they did 3 days of Medrol by IV. Um, and then they said, you're going to have to find a neurologist. But the kicker is that you're a pediatric. So you're going to have to find a pediatric MS neurologist,
Yeah,
which
good
is
luck. Good luck with that.
nowhere.
Yeah.
So we had two options. We could either go to Augusta or Birmingham, Alabama. And so we did end up choosing Augusta, and they said, you'll go there. She'll probably put you on a taper of prednisone for 8 or 10 weeks. I don't remember the exact same time frame. I just know I was on it for a very long time
Mm.
because I did develop Cushing syndrome where you
Okay.
blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that was kind of where I was left off. It was very frustrating. It was
That'd be scary as
scary.
hell. I couldn't even imagine Molly at 15 years old going through that. I mean, I went through it at 27 years old and I was scared shitless. I couldn't even imagine a 15-year-old girl that's going through all those symptoms. And then you're told that you have MS, and I just couldn't even imagine. How did your mom and dad handle that news? That had to be just like a blow to them too.
It was they were amazing. They still are to this day. They are huge backbones for me
Yeah.
and the biggest supporters, huge advocates for me. And I just remember when it happened, both my mom and my dad just looking at me and saying, we are going to get through this. You are not alone. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get you the best treatment. You're going to be healthy. Just because you're told that this is going to happen to you does not mean it's going to happen. You are going to fight this. And so, from the moment I was diagnosed, I was pretty much conditioned to have a strong willed mind when it came to it.
Hmm.
It took me a little bit to get to that mentality, but I did eventually get there.
Hmm.
Um, my parents, though, have been through a lot. It's not just me who's sick. They have 3 kids. I'm the first, and then I have 2 younger brothers, and all 3 of their kids have neurological diseases. A year before I found out I had MS, Jack, who's the middle child, he found out he had Tourette's, and we found out that ran in our family. And then I think it was a year after I was diagnosed with MS, my younger brother, Owen, had a seizure in his sleep and was diagnosed with epilepsy. And so my parents just, they went through the ringer with us.
Yeah, they're warriors
Um,
too. I mean, they're
yeah,
yeah, they are fighting a fight with their kids, and that's just unbelievable that you had to go through this at such a young age, Molly. And just to like we talked about before we recorded, I was just I'm just so impressed that you're 27 and I'm 55 years old, and it sounds like I'm talking to somebody my age, just in like the knowledge that you have with this disease and how you talk about it. And I know you didn't get there overnight. I mean, you've been doing this for 12 years, but I just want to tell you now the how blown away I am at just how you talk about this disease, and you talk about it with such knowledge and just and I know you've been through the ringer. I mean, you've had doctors tell you some really crazy shit, and
yeah.
you're an amazing woman.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It was very, very tough. And I mean, from the moment I was diagnosed, I had everything against me. And I don't really know. I don't want to bash doctors, but they didn't know how to handle me. Um, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go meet this neurologist. She's going to be great for me. I'm going to get better. It's going to be the best treatment that I'll get. Boy, was I wrong, because I went to this clinic. It was an MS clinic, which is scary in itself because you're going to see the worst of the worst.
Right.
And I actually remember sitting in the waiting room, and there was actually a woman right there who was blind in one eye, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was just telling me how awful her life was.
Mm.
And she was just telling me how terrible my life was going to be. I mean, just scaring me to death.
Jeez, oh man.
And yeah, it was not the best experience. And so then when I got called back to the room, I'm like, I'm in a tizzy because I'm like, okay, you got to tell me the truth. Like, just give it straight to me right now because
Right.
I need to know. And she just looked at me and she said, well, you're young, you're 15 years old, you look great, you don't even look sick. She's like, I think you're going to be just fine. And I was like, wait, really? And she was like, yeah. She said, I think that we're just going to get you on a medication and you're just going to deal with it. And I was like, okay. And I said, so what do I do about the symptoms that I'm experiencing? What do I do about, when I do have attacks or when I don't feel good? Like, who do I need to talk to? What do I do? And she said, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, you don't want to talk to anybody, especially not at your age. You don't want to talk to none of your friends. You don't want to talk to like, you don't want to talk to anybody about it. Maybe your parents, but nobody else. And I was like, well, why not? And she said, well, I mean, if you think about it, if you're constantly complaining and saying that you're hurting, then nobody's going to want to be around you. So, my advice to you is just to kind of handle it on your own. If you feel like something is coming on or you feel off or something, then you can go somewhere in private. You can let the attack happen. And then when you're back to normal, you can go back to your business. But don't complain because they're not going to want to be around you and nobody really cares. And I just kind of looked at her and I said, so I need to hide m- my disease and my struggles. And she said, yeah, that's probably what's best. And I was like,
I can't believe
okay.
that's just mind blowing, Molly. That a medical professional would tell a 15-year-old to hide their symptoms. And I know, and I know you took that to heart, and that's the way you lived your life. I mean, you didn't talk about anything. You just went and you just like hid it from people.
I did. I did. I went home. Now my family, they knew because they know when I'm not okay. I can hide it from everybody else, but they just know me like the back of their hand. And so when I was in school, I went back to school. I tried to go back into everything full fledged, but I still was not, I wasn't healthy. But I started having those attacks. I had them in class, in front of my friends, in front of a whole entire classroom. And the things that I heard come out of people's mouths, it was traumatizing in itself, along with the thought that was always in the back of my head telling me, don't talk about it because they're never going to want to be around you.
Man,
And so I was constantly reminding myself, just deal with it, just deal with it, you'll be fine. And so I
did,
developed that mentality for a very long time. I'm talking, I didn't get out of that mentality until 2023. And it took a lot for me to realize the mentality that I had was completely wrong.
yeah. And in all this time, none of these medical professionals have even suggested any kind of mental health counseling, nothing like that.
No, when I was first diagnosed, they did say that depression was something that was very likely for people with MS, but then they said they weren't worried about that with me.
Mm,
Um, and they said that I should be fine.
mm,
I never had anybody recommend it to me. I actually did not go to therapy until I got to college and I had to take one of the psychology classes. And my professor was actually she was a counselor. And so she could just tell something was up with me. And she and I got close. And she was a safe space for me. So I started opening up to her. she started guiding me in a direction I needed to explore, which was therapy. And so I listened to her. I called and I got myself into a therapist here in my hometown. And that kind of started that journey. I think I was probably 18, 19 years old when that started.
Mhm.
Um, and the things that I have just come to realize is very shocking. and and I don't think I know that anything can happen, and I know that therapy can completely rewire my brain, but I do think that it's something that is ingrained in me. And so I still struggle to this day. I'm doing a whole lot better. I
Yeah.
will say that. I do talk more. I've decided to bring more awareness to this disease along with other diseases.
Yeah.
Um, because this isn't the only disease that I have. And so in a matter of 12 years, I've been diagnosed with a total of 11 other diseases. And it's just kind of been like, okay, you just got to be strong. You just got to be positive and you'll get through it. And
If you want to talk about any of your other diagnoses, be my guest because I know that everybody would love to hear what you've been diagnosed with at your age and how you've been dealing with them. Because I mean, like I said, you've been through the ringer with your medical history and with how you have been treated with a lot of the medical professionals, and you're just such a strong woman. So. Yeah, I would just if you want to talk about anything else that you were diagnosed with, go ahead, Molly.
okay. Yeah, no. I think one of the toughest things about the past 12 years, my MS, I found out very quickly. I found out in a matter of 2 weeks. I didn't have to wait years like everybody else that I've heard stories from. I've heard about their journey. I didn't have that struggle. However, I have had that struggle with all of my other diseases. And so for years, I was complaining of things. And it wasn't until 2019 that I found out that I had endometriosis. At the time, it was stage one, so it was very minimal, but it was enough to debilitate, my life, and I was really struggling.
Hmm.
Um, at that time, believe it or not, that was more of a difficult diagnosis for me than my MS was. For me, MS was difficult because I knew what my future could potentially look like.
Hmm.
Um, and I was scared about that, but it didn't scare me as much as the endometriosis did. Endometriosis is more of an issue for me mentally because one of my biggest dreams, actually, not one of my biggest dreams, my biggest dream in life is to become a mother. And I just remember after hearing that I had endometriosis, thinking to myself, okay, not only do you have MS, and MS was already going to be an issue for you, with having pregnancy and children, but now you also have endometriosis. Or am I even going to be able to have children?
Right.
Is it going to be a long journey?
Right.
What am I going to do? And so I fell into a deep, deep, deep depression. And I didn't even know I was in depression. My neurologist actually noticed that something was wrong with me, and he was like, "You're just not your normal self." And so he did a screening on me, and that's when I found out that I was severely depressed. Um, and that was difficult too because depression runs in my family, and I was just determined that I would not suffer with that disease. And so it really it really took a toll on me.
Mm.
But my mom was amazing and she supported me through it. Um, so I found out about those two in the same year. I'd already suffered with anxiety, but it had gotten much worse. And then in 2020, I ended up having, let's see, 2020, the medication that I was on at the time, my DMT, which was Tecfidera. I'd been on it for 8 years. The FDA had actually approved for it in generic formula.
Mm,
And so insurance immediately was like, oh, that's cheaper. We like that more. We're going to send that to you.
right.
My doctor at the time wrote a letter telling them, hey, she needs the actual formula. She cannot take generic. But in a matter of 2 months, I was switched to generic formula. I was graduating college. I got COVID for the first time, and I had a scare in the family um,
Mm,
where my papa almost did not make it. And so it was the perfect storm for my body,
yeah.
and it triggered my first relapse.
Do you have
I had my first relapse.
you had a lot of
It,
stress
it,
going on?
it was a lot. There, I will definitely say this: if you have the perfect storm, you're gonna feel it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're gonna feel it.
Oh yeah.
I um I suffered with constant headaches every day for months. I want to say it was 2 or 3 months straight.
Hmm.
I thought it was just the after effects of COVID, so I just kind of ignored it. And then I went numb from my waist down and I developed vertigo. And I was like, okay, this is not normal. And so I told my mom about it, and she was like, call your neurologist, let your neurologist know. And so I called my neurologist, and the first thing I said to her, I said, I need an MRI. She said, why? She said, you just had one. I said, something's wrong. She asked me what my symptoms were. I told her, I explained everything to her, and she said, and I really appreciated this, but she said, well, you know your body. She said, we're going to get you an MRI. And so she got me in touch with the scheduling. But at that time, that was in February of 21, and they said they couldn't see me till April.
Yes.
And so I was like, if I'm in a relapse, I can't wait until April.
Right.
And so I told him, I said, put me on a cancellation list. We'll go ahead and schedule for April, but put me on a cancellation list. And so they did. And I got a call one Monday morning. It was actually on President's Day. And I was scheduled to start a new job the next day. And so when they called, they said they were scheduling for my MRI. And I said, you know what? I said, if you're able to, if you can do it today, I will drive up to Macon right now and I will come have this MRI
Hmm.
because I'm not going to be able to take off once I start this new job. She said, well, let me talk to the tech. I'll see what he says and I'll let you know. And so the MRI tech said, you know what? I'll work through my lunch, tell her to come on up and we'll get the MRI done. And, since watching other people's stories and stuff, I've seen where people will say, if you pay attention to the text when you get done, if you pay attention to their demeanor and their face and stuff, it pretty much can tell you what's to come.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I didn't even look. And I should have, but I didn't. And so I drove home. I started my new job the next day, and I got a phone call while I was at work. And I felt so terrible because the first thing that I do with everything, and I'm talking relationships, work relationships, anybody that comes into my life, I immediately make it known that I have multiple sclerosis because I don't want anybody coming to me and saying, well, I had no idea. You didn't tell me. You hid this from me. I don't want anybody to be blind. And I completely forgot to tell my new boss. And so I had the conversation with him that morning. I said, hey, just so you know, I have this. I've had it for 8 years, never had any issues. I've already had my MRI this month, so I should be fine. He was like, oh, great. And then I got a phone call from my neurologist. And so I answered the phone and they said, hey, we need you to come back tomorrow and we need to discuss your results. And I said, no. I said, you can tell me my results over the phone like y'all always do. I said, it's okay. And she was like, no, no, your neurologist wants you up here because she wants to discuss them in person.
Hmm.
And so my heart sank.
Yeah.
I knew, I knew. And I'm someone who tries to handle everything on my own. Once again, this comes from very early on
Right.
where I was basically told to.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I called my family, I told my parents just to kind of give them a heads up. My mom she's a teacher, and so she was like, "Molly, I can't get off." And I was like, "It's okay." I was like, "It's fine. I'm prepared. I already know it's going to be bad news. I can do this." And so I was prepared to do that, and I told my boss. I left, and my dad called me on my way home, and he said, "Hey, I'm going with you tomorrow." And I said, "No." I said, "I'm prepared. It's okay. I already know what the results are." And he was very optimistic, and he said, "No, you don't." He was like, "It may not be nothing," but he said, "But you don't need to be alone."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." And I'm glad that they did go with me, because even though I was prepared, I wasn't prepared for the news that I got, because it was devastating. We get there the next morning. The doctor's super, super happy to see me, and she's so nice to me. She's asking me how I've been. And I just give her the typical response, and I say, "Oh, I've been better."
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, there's a reason for that." And I said, "All right, hit me with it." And she said, "So I called you up here because I wanted to discuss your results in person." And she said, "You are in a relapse. It's pretty severe." She said, "You have 6 new lesions on your cerebellum, and all of your other existing lesions are active and have grown in size."
Mm.
And I was like, "What?" And so then she's like, "We've got to immediately start treatment. You got to stop this medicine immediately. We got to find another one. We've got to tackle this now because we don't want further disability to happen." She said, "Because and I remember her saying this. I said, "Well, is this going to be something that's here to stay? Like the issues that I'm having now, is this just something I'm just going to have forever?"
Yeah.
And she said, "I can't tell you that you will and you won't," but she said, "But they're pretty, where they're at, it's bad." And so I was like,
Did,
"Okay."
did you get the Medrol treatment to see if you could bounce it back and get the inflammation down any?
So I did. I did get the Medrol treatment. That was the first part that we had to do when I came off the Tecfidera.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Come off the Tecfidera, stop it tonight. You're going to come back up here on Monday. You'll meet with the infusion center. They're going to teach your mom how to do your steroids. We're going to go ahead and put an IV in, and you'll go home and you'll do them at home." And so that's what we did. And then at the same time, she said, "We need to discuss your medicine options." And she was like, "This is a pretty severe relapse. And so we need to put you on something pretty strong." And at that time, the top drug of choice was Ocrevus. And so she starts explaining Ocrevus to me, and she's saying it's an amazing drug. It's one of the most beneficial that she's seen in all of her MS patients. And she just throws out there, "But it has, its side effects, but they're very, very minimal." And I was like, "Okay, well, what are they?"
Mm-hmm.
And so she says, "There is the possibility of it possibly causing breast cancer." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "So you're going to have to start getting mammograms. We're going to have to check you yearly. Like, you're going to have to stay on top of this along with your blood work, but
Yeah.
more in-depth blood work." And I was like,
And,
"Okay."
and you're 21 at the time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I had just turned 21. I think
Yeah,
so.
I think I remember you saying because I remember I remember saying that you had to start getting mammograms at 21 and then they were giving you a hard time about it, right?
Oh, yeah, it was insane. I mean, my first one, which, Medrol, it works great when you have a relapse, but it only works for about 2 weeks. So you've got to get on medication in order to keep yourself from going back into the relapse.
Mm-hmm.
And the exact same day that I started my Medrol, my papa ended up passing away.
Mm.
And it was, once again, a huge stressor for me. And so I didn't have the medicine in me anymore. And I had another relapse.
Mm.
And so I remember insurance was consistently denying me. They would not approve Ocrevus. They kept saying my neurologist could not even prescribe my medication. She didn't have the qualifications and didn't know what she was doing.
Mm.
And they kept trying to appeal it, but insurance doesn't read. They
Ex-
just deny, deny, deny. And so I remember being at home and I am just in pain, crying on the floor, begging mama and daddy to do something for me. And my parents called insurance and they're just demanding to know why I keep getting declined. And this woman is just sadly saying she's just being declined. Like she just can't switch to another medication. She can't do that. And they are screaming at her and telling her I'm in the middle of a relapse. I can no longer take the other medication. And my dad just finally says, you know what? He said, if you don't want to help us, then we will sue you. We will sue you for everything that you have. And in that moment, that woman said, no, 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 let me get my supervisor for you.
Man.
The supervisor immediately came on the phone and he said, okay, she's now approved.
Oh, wow. That easy, right?
That easy. And my parents said, what was the issue? And come to find out, when the paperwork was sent, the intake of the paperwork was done completely wrong. And so instead of telling us that it was just done wrong, they just denied me and wouldn't give me an explanation.
Wow.
And so it was literally a coding error on insurance.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I got that approval
And in the
and
mean
started.
and in the meantime, you're the one sitting at home stressing out about it, and the insurance company's
Yeah.
just sitting here deny, deny, deny. Yeah, I can't stand insurance companies. They aggravate me. They really do.
Yeah, I've had some choice words with them myself.
Oh, so have I.
I've learned
Yeah.
a lot over the years, but before I could start the medication, I had to get a mammogram. And so we scheduled a mammogram and the mammogram was actually the day after my papa had passed. And so we had spent all morning with family and everything, and people were visiting us, and everybody was coming up to me and they're like, Molly, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. And they're like, no, are you okay? Are you taking care of yourself? We don't want you to have another relapse. And I'm like, listen, just let me grieve. I'm 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 okay. I'm gonna handle whatever happens, but I gotta get through this too. And so we left and we headed for my appointment. And we get to this office for my mammogram. And it took us just an hour of fighting with them because they saw my age and they were like, you don't need a mammogram. There's no reason why you need a mammogram. And it wasn't until I pulled up Ocrevus on Google and showed them that it can cause breast cancer that they finally realized that I had to get a mammogram to start this medication and would have to continue to get mammograms. Every single time I went for the 2 years that I was on Ocrevus, it was a fight every single time.
See,
And
this is a perfect example of my saying ignorance is a choice, and those people choose to be ignorant about different medications and the warnings on them and why people are coming in for tests, and they're just I don't know. It's just ignorant people, ignorant, ignorant.
I will agree with that. And it always shocked me because every time that I would say something, they'd be like, oh, you're so young. That just doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, can we stop just judging people by their age and just listen
Man,
to what I'm saying? Because I'm not making this up. I promise you that. Like, I do not want to have this done, but I have to.
exactly.
And so,
It's not like you're signing up to get MS and to get on a drug that may cause breast cancer and to get a mammogram at
no,
21 years old. Jeez, oh man.
no. And so, but that wasn't that drug in itself, Ocrevus. It may work for other people, but it did its job for me as far as getting me back into remission, and I had stable MRIs, but it was not a good drug for me.
You had no life.
Um,
Yeah, you had no life on it.
no, I did not. I was highly allergic to it. Um, I did not know that I was allergic to it because I thought that I was just having the reactions that are labeled on it.
Mhm.
And looking back, the day that I first did the infusion, which your first infusion is broken up into two, over a series of, I think, 2 weeks. And the first one that I had done, I was fine for about an hour. And then out of nowhere, at first I got very thirsty. And so I was drinking a lot of water. I kept sending my dad to get me more and more water. And then I developed wheezing. Then I developed a cough. And I'm not talking like a dry cough, I'm talking a huge productive cough
Mhm.
to the point that it sounded like I was choking. Then my face felt extremely hot and itchy. And then I felt my throat closing up. And my dad, when he heard me with my cough and stuff, he immediately jumped up and like came to me and he looked at me and he just started screaming for the doctors. And they come in and they see me and they immediately stop the infusion, push IV Benadryl. And I mean, we waited for an hour for it to wear off. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not going to be continued. I'm going to go home. We're going to have to find another drug.
Yeah.
Nope. My neurologist decided after the Benadryl had been in me for a while and I had basically come off of the reaction that um, she wanted him to continue to try. And that would be my journey. And so I had Ocrevus for 2 years.
Mm.
So I had a total of 4 infusions plus the two that they first had to split up.
And you went through this
And
every time.
every time, and it got worse
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the infusion that was awful. I hurt constantly. I was not myself. I wasn't a joy to be around. I felt like I was deteriorating, but my MRI was saying that I was stable. And so I felt like I was going crazy. I did not feel as young as I was. And I felt like a shell of a person. And so it was very difficult for me mentally.
Yeah.
And then when I would express it to my doctor, I would hear, oh, that's normal. People with MS have these type of reactions as long as we can push the pre-meds and you can handle them fine and Benadryl does its job, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I trusted that.
Yeah.
But in 23, I just continued to get worse and worse and worse to the point that I was in and out of the hospital. And I got frustrated. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm not getting help. Something is clearly wrong. And so my employer, the HR director, she told me, you need to look into Mayo in Jacksonville. And I was like, okay. And so I got myself set up with an appointment. And that was where my life would become so much more clear.
Mm.
That first appointment, the doctor, that's the first time that I've ever met a neurologist who truly wants to listen to me and doesn't tell me, oh, well, that's not a symptom of MS. Because here's the kicker: MS has so many symptoms that you don't even know what the symptoms are.
Right.
You can't predict what someone's symptoms are going to be.
Nope.
And so when doctors would say that to me, I'd say, how dare you say that to me? Aren't we told? Doesn't it say that you can't predict what MS is going to be for someone because it's different for everybody? There's symptoms out there that y'all don't even know about. So don't tell me that.
Yeah.
And she was the first neurologist who looked at me when I was describing my symptoms and she said, "Oh, yeah, that's typical symptoms." Nobody ever believed that my dystonia, my drooping of my face, my locking up of my extremities was my MS. They would say, "Oh, that's just anxiety." And so
Hmm.
I would have spasms constantly. I was just in pain. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, you're just having spasms. And dystonia and stroke like symptoms have been proven to typically be the first signs of MS, and people just don't know it.
Mhm.
And so she said, but I also wonder if you don't have other issues. She was like, so I'm gonna just start you off and we're gonna basically start from the bottom and test you for everything. You're gonna go see all the specialties and we're gonna make sure that you don't have anything else.
Mhm.
And I was like, Okay. I don't think I was prepared for what I would find out
Yeah.
because from 23 to now, I've been diagnosed with vestibular migraines and occipital neuralgia, which is a huge component of
Mhm.
my migraines, my neck pain, my vertigo,
Yeah.
my dizziness, all of that. I also found out I had PPPD. I'm gonna butcher this. I
Mhm.
always do. But it stands for persistent perceptual postural dizziness.
Okay.
Basically, it's PTSD for the brain of someone who has just had motion sickness their whole life. And so their brain just thinks they're dizzy all the time.
Got it.
And then I found out that I had pelvic floor dysfunction, OCD. Um, I was diagnosed with a severe form of anxiety. And then I just found out this year that I have interstitial cystitis, which is an inflammation, autoimmune inflammation of the bladder, which coincidentally, the interstitial cystitis, endometriosis, and the MS are all connected.
Mhm.
They're all they're all connected in some way. So it's not really a shocker, but at the same time, it's a shocker
Yeah.
for my brain.
Yeah.
Um,
But you're
so
getting
it's
but you're
just
getting you're getting answers too though, and that had to be a relief almost.
yeah, it was. The emotions that you feel when you get the answers, I can't describe
Yeah.
because you go through a period of, oh my gosh, if you just would have listened to me,
Yeah, right.
this could have been figured out when I was in high school. If somebody just would have listened, I wouldn't have suffered this long and had so many issues.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the emotions. And then the other emotion was, oh my gosh, I've got something else wrong with me.
Yeah.
What else is there going to be?
Yeah. Right.
And so it's just kind of like, and then the acceptance comes, and I'm like, okay, this makes so much sense. I can treat it. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through it. I've got a huge support system. This is good news. It's terrible news, but it's also good news. And so I don't think anybody's ever really going to be able to understand that
No.
unless they too suffer with chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you there. Let me ask you
it,
this, Molly. I mean, you're young, and I mean, what was the relationship situation like for you? Because I mean, you're 15 years old, getting diagnosed with MS. That's a chronic disease. I gotta believe that that had to be a barrier with relationships. So, can you just kind of explain your journey with that?
Yeah, for sure. It was very difficult. It was difficult in all aspects. It was difficult in friendships. It was difficult in romantic relationships. It was difficult in work. I mean, it's just difficult all around. And so I quickly learned who my true friends were. I realized that I had to be very careful who I chose to come into my life. And so I developed the ability of really starting to observe people and understand who someone is before really and truly getting to know them. And so, which, in my opinion, can be a fault, but it can also be a positive because I was able to prevent people from coming into my life and giving me false hope of being there for me when
Yeah,
all they were ever going to do was leave.
I
Now,
understand
did I
that.
do that with everybody? No, I
Yeah.
didn't. Um, that's where the romantic relationships really came into play. But I think one of the things, like I said earlier, I said, I always would let my employers know and anybody in my life know about my MS.
Hmm.
Um, one of the very first things that I would do when meeting a potential um, boyfriend, I would say, "Hey, I'm just going to lay this out there for you because you need to know this.
Hmm.
I understand if you can't handle it and you walk away, but I have multiple sclerosis. This is what it is. This is what it can do. This is the possibilities. But I'm fighting every day. I'm on great medication.
Mhm.
And I could see based off of their reaction and how they responded if they were going to stay or not.
I was just going to ask you, what were some of the reactions you got? Because I went through similar situation. I was 15 years into my diagnosis when I went through a divorce, and I had to start the dating game all over. And I was like, who the hell's going to want a 45-year-old with MS for 15 years? And I had some stories. I actually went to, out on a first date, and I told the lady that I had MS, and she got up and walked out, like literally right after I told her. I'm like, "Hey, nice meeting you. Nice seeing you."
Yeah.
Cool.
I actually had a similar situation. I told a guy about it and he just looked at me like a deer in headlights. And I was just like, "You're freaked out, aren't you?" And he was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I can handle this." And I said, "I appreciate that." I said, "I appreciate you giving me the honest truth
Mhm.
because I needed that and it saved me." But then I did have people who did choose to stay, and they did more damage to me mentally because of the things that were held over my head.
Yeah.
Um,
You had people telling you,
and
"Who's gonna take you? I'm the only one that's gonna take you, blah, 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 blah," and making you feel like you were worthless.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I really did. I stayed with someone for 6 years because I believed that nobody would ever love me, deal with me, want to be with someone as sick as I am, and would not just walk out on me. And so it was a very toxic relationship. I was miserable. I was deteriorating, but I stayed. And I'm so thankful that I got out of it. I think it was also God's will for everything that happened because now I can say I met the most amazing man and we just got engaged the beginning of June
Yes,
and we're going to be getting married
yes,
in
you are.
December. So
Yeah, and
that's
that's
something that would happen if
yeah.
I didn't go through what I went through.
And I
So,
want you to tell the story of how you met Chad because it's a beautiful story, and I want everybody to hear that because I mean, for people that have a chronic disease that think that there's nobody out there, now you just listen to this story. There are.
yeah, it was Um, it started out like I feel like relationships should started out as a friendship, just someone who I could go to in confidence and someone who was just there for me no matter what. And the first time that he messaged me on Instagram. I was in the past relationship I was in, and I immediately told him, I was like, "Hey, I appreciate, your compliments and thank you so much. However, I'm in a relationship. I'm not going to disrespect him. Thank you. Hope you have a great night. Good luck with everything in your journey." And he said to me, "Wow, you're amazing. I respect you so much for that. Thank you for not leading me on and just trying to play both sides." And I said, "I would never do that. That's something that I see way too much. And I have no respect for people that way." And so we kind of ended it there. We talked about our faith, our struggles and stuff. And that was that. And then in 23, I was deteriorating. I was consistently sick. He knew it. And so he was there for me. He was letting me voice my frustrations and just say what I wanted to say because I never felt like I could ever say anything around people.
Hmm.
And so when in the middle of 23, me and my ex boyfriend felt like something was off. It just, I felt abandoned.
Hmm.
I turned to Cody, who's my fiance, and I just, I deepened my friendship with him and I just got so close with him. And in January of 24, I actually was at work. I came down with the flu. And so I ended up going home. And my roommate had texted me and she was like, "Hey, I paid such and such today. So can you go ahead and send me your portion of it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went to Venmo her. And when I got on there, I saw where someone had Venmoed my then boyfriend some money. I didn't know who she was. And so I looked her up on Facebook.
Mhm.
And curiosity definitely got the cat that day. But I do think that it was God for sure because I would have never, ever looked unless everything that happened that day did not happen.
Mhm.
Um, but I looked at her page, and the very first thing that I saw was a collage of her and my boyfriend at the time from August of 23 to December of
Mm.
23. And I was just like, hmm, makes sense. I took a screenshot of the first picture. I sent it to 3 people. I sent it to my mom, my roommate, and I sent it to Cody.
Mhm.
And you'd think I would be distraught and just bawling my eyes out and unable to breathe and just wallowing in sorrow, but I didn't. I cried maybe for a minute or two,
Mhm.
mostly because I was just angry
Right.
that I fell for that.
Yeah, right.
But, I was really sick, and Cody had messaged me and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I'm going to bring you something tonight." He said, "I know you've been feeling bad and I just want to bring something that's just going to make you smile." And I was like, "Okay." He went home and he cooked my favorite soup
Hmm.
and he brought it to me. And you're thinking, oh, he probably left it on the front doorstep and said, "Have a great night," with a nice little note. No. He made the soup, and when I opened the door, he came into my apartment and he sat there with me, even though I was contagious with the flu, and I did not want him to get sick, but he was like, "I don't care if I get sick." He was just like, "I just want to be here in case you need me."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Talk about it if you want to. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to." And he was just like, "I'm here."
Yeah.
And that started the journey of him being in my life more and more, and me opening up to him, and him revisiting what he was trying to get me to do in 22, which was give him a chance. And I eventually would. And now it took me a long time to open up to him because I was terrified. I didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
I knew that my issues were a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And but I should have known, and I did know this. I knew this very early on. A couple weeks after I'd gotten over the flu, I ended up in the hospital, and it was actually after one of my treatments. And he had to actually call an ambulance to come get me because I had an awful vertigo attack to the point I couldn't function. And my body just shut down. And it's 12 o'clock in the morning. It was on a Wednesday. And so he followed the ambulance to the ER, and my parents had to drive 30 minutes to get to us, and they were doing that with the intent to relieve Cody and let him go home so that he could go to bed and be ready for work the next day.
Right.
But when they got there and they were talking to him, and I think honestly and truthfully this was like their first time really meeting him. They said, "All right, Cody, we got it from here. You can go home." And Cody looked at my daddy and he said, "With all due respect, sir," he said, "I'm not here because I have to be, but I'm here because I want to be." And every single one of our mouths just like dropped open. Like, did he really just say that to my daddy? Did someone really just stand up to my daddy and say that? And say the words of, "I'm choosing to be here because I want to be and not because I feel obligated." Because
That's an awesome young man there, Molly. That's just an impressive young man to do that.
I agree. I agree. I knew in that moment that everything that he told me was true.
Yeah.
And I could trust him. My parents trusted him. He actually ended up going with me to a neurology appointment. Nobody had ever gone with me to appointments except for my mom. They also It was also in Jacksonville, which is 3 hours from me. And so it was early one morning. And so we had to stay the night before. My parents they trusted him enough for me to be with him for 2 days, essentially, without them there, which was huge in itself.
Yeah.
And it was just like God was showing me, hey, You've been so stubborn for so long, and now I'm going to show you what I've had meant for you for your whole life.
Yeah. It's
And
just,
you're going to get treated the way that you deserve.
yeah, absolutely. That's just such a beautiful story, Molly. I know when we talked about it before we recorded, I was just blown away. I think Cody is just such an awesome young man, and I would love to meet the guy someday and shake his hand.
Yeah, he's amazing. I am so thankful for him. He is a huge advocate for me and my biggest rock. Um, I couldn't be more grateful than I am.
Yeah.
So, and I say all that because it just goes to show you that the right person is going to stay no matter what,
Yep.
even when you try to push them away. Because let me tell you, that was something I tried my best to do.
Yeah.
And I guess that was my way of testing people. And some people it worked. But with him, no, never. And that's all I think I've ever wanted. I think anybody ever wants,
Yeah.
especially those that suffer with chronic illnesses.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be accepted for the person that we are with and with our flaws, with and without them, and take us for what we're worth and love us for what we're worth. And we got a lot to offer.
Yeah. It's it's been an amazing journey. And I think the past 12 years has just really shaped me into who I am. Um
You're
I
like I
I
like
don't
like I told you, Molly. You just blow me away. I'm talking to somebody 27 years old. I'm talking to somebody the same age that I was when I got diagnosed, and I feel like I just been spending the last hour and a half talking to somebody that is my right around my age, and that's been dealing with this disease for 30 years, like me almost.
I hear that a lot, honestly. But I think that just has to do with the fact that, I mean, I was 15 years old, and
Yeah,
so I really, truthfully, immediately grew up overnight.
yeah, you
I
did.
had to start taking care of myself and paying attention and advocating for myself, and that took some time, but I think that even though really bad things happened in the beginning and things that scarred me and that were, you know, a big trauma for me, I think they shaped me into who I am. And I think that's the reason why I am such a huge advocate now and why I'm so able to talk about everything and to just try to remind people be your own advocate. Don't don't trust every doctor because they don't know. Don't trust every medication that is, you know, described to you or pushed on you. You need to do your research.
Yep.
You need to take care of yourself because that's so important, especially when it comes to MS treatment.
Yep.
That is so important.
Yep.
And
I mean, all
I
all
believe it or
all
not, I'm thankful.
Yeah, all the time, I mean, we as MSP, I laugh at the commercials, but I see these commercials on TV for these drugs, and they put all this money into these commercials, and everybody's smiling on there, taking these DMTs, and they're saying how great they are, and I'm like, my God, why are they just lying to people, about this disease? I mean, they make it look like it's a party, and no, let's talk real about it.
It is a deceptive practice. I will 100% tell you that because I promise you, when I look at the Ocrevus commercials, every single time I would watch them, and even to this day, I will shoot a bird right at the TV because it's just like, I'm sorry, but I was not smiling and happy and walking a dog in a park
Yeah,
and enjoying my life. I was miserable.
right.
Now, that might not be everybody else,
No, I
but
mean it's not everybody, but I mean it's just the point that they,
no.
they 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 just try to make it like it's not that big of a deal. Here, take a pill, you'll be fine. And I wish it was that simple.
I wish it was too because it's not fun, especially because with MS, you're typically looking at infusions or injections. Luckily, I don't feel needles. That doesn't bother me, but I know that it is a huge struggle for other people.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, another really hard concept to understand is the drug classes where you only have to take it once a month or once every 6 months or maybe once a year. I don't understand how a medication can protect you for that long. So I feel like that increases a lot of anxiety in people as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
That was
there's
something I really struggled with.
yeah, there's all kind of factors with these meds. I mean, like you said, with the cancer with the Ocrevus and Tisabri, you got PML, and other drugs you got PML, and I mean, and that's all on our mental health. I mean, we got them in the back of our head. We're thinking about them all the time.
We are, and it's definitely not something that we won't think about because it's our life,
Yeah.
but we just take it one day at a time, and we think that we have a DMT that's working for us because the whole
Hmm.
point of them is to slow down the progression,
Right.
um, because this is a progressive disease. It is a slow progressing disease.
Yep.
If you're on a DMT and you take care of yourself and whatnot. But I think I am definitely so grateful that of the technology and the advances that they have with DMTs because I, for one,
Hmm.
cannot wait for the day. I can't wait for the day that we finally get a cure.
Yeah, me
I
too.
do hope that it's in my lifetime. I
Yeah.
really do.
I hope so too. I hope I see it in my lifetime. I know when I first got diagnosed when I was 27, there were 3 DMTs out, and now I think there's over 25, 26 of them. So there's so many more choices at least now, and like
Yeah.
if I would have crashed on all three of those 3 DMTs in the beginning, I would have been out of luck. I wouldn't have had anything to turn to. But at least now there's there's so many of them that hopefully somebody you can find one that's good, that your body handles well.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, I'm currently on Kesimpta and I love it. I have absolutely no side effects. Um, Now, of course, if I don't take out the injection pen out of the fridge and let it fall out for long enough, it can be too cold. So when I'm injecting it, it can burn a little.
Hmm.
But if that's the only symptoms I have to deal with, then I am a-okay with that because
Yeah, that ain't bad at all.
I loved Tecfidera. That was my first one I had for the first 8 years. If I could go back to it, I would. I loved it.
Yeah,
But Ocrevus was awful. I never want to go back to that. So Kesimpta has been
yeah,
a breath of fresh air for me.
and
And
I hope that one is your DMT of choice for the rest of your life. That'll be a good thing because that means you won't have any
I
more
do too.
episodes.
I do too.
Yeah,
Trust me. I I I'm very thankful
yeah.
that I have found something.
Hey Molly,
And
if
I
if
pray that for everybody else.
Yeah. Hey, Mal, if you want to say one more thing to anybody that's listening out there that's in similar situation as you, they're young and they're into this journey, whether they're just getting diagnosed, but just the point that they're young. I mean, what would your words be for them just to, it's where you're going to be okay. Just take it one day at a time and just keep on fighting. What would be your message to them?
I think the number one thing that I would want them to know is that they are a warrior. We're all warriors. They're not alone. And it is very important to just take it one day at a time. If you feel like you can't function one day, that's okay. Don't take it out on yourself. Listen to your body and rest. Take all the rest that you need. Don't don't push too hard. And another thing, I know that when we find out something devastating in our lives, the easiest thing to do is to immediately go to Google. I know I did it. That's all I had when I was 15 years old. I didn't know nobody.
Yeah.
There were no forums, there weren't support groups, there was nothing. And so I know that everybody immediately goes to Google, but I will tell you right now, Google is the last thing you want to do when you want to learn about MS. I have learned just in the past couple of years, I have been on TikTok and I have managed to make my way into the MS community of TikTok and just to watch the videos of everybody and their journey and just to learn of their symptoms and what they've gone through and to also hear that they've also experienced what I've experienced. It's just like, okay, this is the type of community that you want. And
Awesome.
so
Thanks.
my advice is definitely go to TikTok, go to Facebook, find someone or a group of people that you can just look at and you can go to because I promise you they want to be there for you. that is one thing that I am huge on. I want to be there for everybody because I don't want anybody to feel alone like I did
Yeah.
because it this disease is isolating in itself.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to build a community and to know that you have someone to turn to.
Yeah.
So and just find that group of people or just
I total
I mean, I
I
guess
I totally agree with you, Molly. I mean, I think community is so important too, and that's where we met each other on TikTok. If anybody is wants to connect with you on TikTok, what is your screen name on there? And I will put it in the description so that if anybody wants to follow Molly and just get to know her and ask her questions, because she's like an open book. I mean, we talk all the time on TikTok. Awesome, awesome person to get to know, especially if you're young in this disease. She is just a good person to turn to because she's young herself. She's 27 years old. But what's your screen name, Molly?
yeah, it's Molly Fletch 101. That's with an IE. My name is spelled with an IE, so I'm different, because
Yeah.
I got so many things that are different
N-
about me.
That's all right.
But
Nothing wrong with that. I appreciate you so much, Molly. Like I said, I love talking to you. I mean, we just spent quite a while talking. You're probably one of my longest podcast episodes right now. But I can talk to you for another hour. Because you're just like you're so easy to talk to, and it's like I'm talking to somebody my age. Like I said, and I know you're only 27, and that's why I'm just blown away by you.
thank you. I really do appreciate that. I know that it was probably a little bit longer than you're used to, and I'm sure your audience is used to. But I do hope that this can help someone, and I hope that it's good for your podcast. And I really appreciate you letting me share my story because
Oh,
I never thought I'd ever get to.
Oh, and like I said, I thank you, Molly, because and you'll be recording again with me because I'll have you on again because I love talking to you. And there's so many topics to talk about with this disease and how we handle it, and how we just keep on pushing on. And I know we can record for another hour and a half and talk about some completely different topics and keep on going.
Yeah, that's probably true, but I won't keep you that long.
That's all right. All right. If you want to follow me on TikTok, I am MS Michigan Man 64. You can find me on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64. You can also follow me on Facebook, Brian Wallace, out of Brunswick, Ohio. Until the next episode, this is the MS Michigan Man. I am out.